Hey, it's Clarence here, and welcome to episode 2 of the Aligned, Engaged, Fulfilled podcast. I wanted to jump on before you started the episode to say that even though the topic we're discussing revolves around marketing, our focus is still about changing the way that we do business to be more human-centric. So no, this episode is not just for marketers, it's for leaders across the organization. That's it. Enjoy the episode. Hello, everyone, and welcome to Aligned, Engaged, Fulfilled, where we talk about the very nuanced process of finding fulfillment in your career or in your business. I'm your host, Clarence Moore, and today we're joined by Tanya and Tony Thorson, the co-creators of B2A, Business to Anyone, and the authors of the strategic and creative wake-up call, Get Off Your Mass. Tanya is a growth strategist and product leader who has helped scale iconic brands like Land's End and New Balance by blending consumer empathy with business impact. A true cross-functional champion, she has a deep instinct for what makes a message stick. Tony brings clarity to complexity. As a managing director of a precision gauge manufacturer, he combines a marketing instinct with an engineering mindset. With deep roots in industrial sales and B2B strategy, he believes that the best marketing isn't about slick language, it's about meaning and momentum. Together, they've rethought how marketing works, creating frameworks born not in theory, but from years of practice, messy whiteboards, and conversations over coffee. Their book is a guide to rediscovering the human element in a world of machine-made everything, and we're going to dive into how they do it. Welcome, Tanya and Tony, and thank you so much for being here and joining us for a conversation today.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you.
Yeah, I'm so excited for this conversation. For a little bit of context, I've only been in the marketing space for about 5 years, and really as a CMO for just the past year before I left marketing to transition into consulting. It only took me 5 years to go from the start of my marketing career to being in the C-suite, when on average it takes about 10 to 20 years. Now, I say that not to toot my own horn, although maybe a little bit, but to give context to how much work, time, and effort was put in for me to really understand marketing beyond the jargon and complex frameworks. And one of the things that very quickly became evident to me was that marketing was broken and it needed to evolve, right? And it's no question that over the past decade or so, technology and the internet have revolutionized marketing, and finally being able to measure its impact absolutely changed the game for us marketers. But it was actually a blessing and a curse because it also worsened our understanding of the marketing practice. So fast forward to today, Tanya and I are lucky enough to be a part of an incredible community, about 5,000 CMOs and heads of marketing from companies all over the world. And recently, I'd say about a month ago in June, Tanya announced in that channel that they just launched this book, Get Off Your Mass. And after reading the preview summary that she provided, I immediately knew I wanted to pick her brain about it because it resonated so much with my perspectives on marketing. So I ran right to Amazon.
Great. We're so happy to do that.
Thank you.
So your book's title, Get Off Your Mass, is such a fantastic play on words and a direct language. Let's start there. In your view, what does it mean for marketing to have lost its nerve, and why is getting off your mask the first critical step?
I think that the title says so much with a short statement. Where I've been on both sides of the fence in B2C, in retail, and in B2B SaaS startup. And one of the things that I've noticed is we've really lost that human touch and that connection with the potential buyer.
Yeah.
We've really started looking at things because of AI, because of some of the technology that we have. While we believe it's giving us that intel, what it's doing is it's making us more transactional. And there comes the spray and pray, and there comes the mass. And that's where, quite honestly, it was a conversation that both Tony, you and I were having about what is the title? And the original name came from our newsletter, and we're like, let's make this a book.
Well, yeah, Clarence, I'm glad you like the name, because we had some friends that liked that and some friends that didn't get it. But like you said, I think it means more. It means two things, right? Like when you talk about mass marketing and you talk about the way that people have done it, just with large commercials, like, the old school Coca-Colas and Marlboros and what have you. We're so much about personalization now. So that what we're saying to people is, get off that mass marketing, start personalization. Right. And then of course it's kind of cheeky when we say get off your mask. We all know that's kind of a motivational, a motivational thing. So we thought it'd be a cool title. And she's right. That was actually the title for our newsletter, and we just rolled with it.
Well, what I love about it is it goes against the grain of marketing in a lot of ways, because, obviously your framework is the Poise framework, which I'll dive into in a little bit, but marketing has always been about poise, right? It's about this way of presenting, and a book title like Get Off Your Mask, which obviously is a play on Get Off Your Ass, kind of goes against that. And it's almost a call to action in and of itself, just in terms of the message behind the title, which I love. I think it's brilliant.
Thank you.
So, Tanya, you talked about kind of this conversational process that you guys took. And when you shared your biography with me, it painted this wonderful picture of your ideas being born not in a sterile boardroom, but from messy whiteboards and conversations over coffee. Can you guys take us back to one of those early wait, what if moments where the beat away concept really started to crystallize for you both?
Yeah, I would say me taking a new challenge, going into B2B SaaS, going into a B2B SaaS startup, coming from retail, coming from B to C, coming from B to C, doing both wholesale and direct to consumer, where I was in this mindset of, okay, we have these two independent lanes and they never cross over. You stay in your lane, B2Cers, you stay in your lane, B2Bers, and there's no crossover. And with 20 years of being in retail and then going into technology, going into SaaS, going into B2B SaaS, I, of course, saw some of the things that were very instrumental in a B2C world that could possibly have a positive impact on the potential buyers as we were looking at our go-to-market strategy. And testing some certain things like personalization. The first thing I noticed was we need to be more of a buyer-led and looking through the lens of the buyer instead of a product lens. And so what does that look like? What does that mean? And that's where, the whiteboarding and the messy stuff started, the dialogue started happening with the team. What does that mean? And how can we have an impact? And the risk versus the reward in trying this, there's so much more reward versus less risk because of two things. We have AI to help us now to arrive at what this means. And secondly, we're in a digital space. So we're talking about things that we can change, that we can transform, that having that agility and kind of failing forward and trying some of these principles that I was able to bring from a B2C space.
Yeah. I think actually it's been a fun process, to be honest with you. The idea of business to anyone is really, it's been organic. It's been conversations that we've had like over time. So it's hard to pinpoint one exact point, but I know like over time, our kids, they're in their 20s, they both have jobs. We talk about work-life balance. A lot of times people think that means all life and no work. I think Tanya and I bring work home, and that's part of life. And we talk about it every day. Yeah. So, and I come from a more business to business. She comes from more business to consumer. And we just found over time that there's so much overlap and so many things contextual that people, like she said, you don't need to stick in one lane or this lane. It's like, let's bring them together. And I think we brought that together in B to A, that idea. And then with the pillars of Poise, which I know we're going to talk about later, that's kind of the foundation for the whole idea, really.
Yeah. Which I actually, first of all, I commend you both on taking that step, because for a lot of us in the marketing field, or really, any industry, it's very hard to put ourselves in a position where we're questioning the very notion of what we've been taught in terms of our profession. So to take that step to say, what if all this is wrong? Or what if all this is wrong for what the world is like now? I think is a huge step that is very difficult for a lot of people to take. So I commend you guys on that. And I agree. I think that, in a world like such that we live in today, it's very important for us to find balance in integration. And so I want to dive into something that you guys talk about in the synopsis for the book. You say that a person doesn't transform at 8:59 a.m. and again at 5:01 p.m., which just paints a very, very vivid picture for, I think, most of us who are listening to this podcast right now. Every leader or marketer listening has likely sat in a meeting where they talked about a B2B target in a completely dehumanized way. Can you guys paint a picture of how this B2B, B2C thinking creates real world misalignment and missed opportunities for brands?
Yeah, I would say that you're right. The 8:59, the 5:01. I love that because I think it says so much and it really gets you to think, right? Like,
Yeah.
where are they gonna go with this? And really, what it's doing is it's really stripping away the B2B and the B2C. It's saying you're a human, you're a business woman, a businessman, you're a mother, you're a wife, you're a husband, and you're not on the clock from 8 to 5 or 9 to 5, just being Tanya Thorson, a CMO, Tony Thorson being the managing director.
Right.
We are constantly, and this is the way our brains are today. And we have technology and we have social, we have all of these things. So by default, we are thinking about 8:05. Oh my God, budgets are due tomorrow. I've got to sync this up with my boss. I've got to make sure my team's in alignment. And then at 8:25, I might be, oh gosh, I forgot. We've got soccer tonight. What are we doing for dinner? All of those things are intertwined in our brain. And so as marketers, we have to really start thinking about it from that lens and not get so fixated on the funnel.
Yes.
And that's where, we can talk more about the funnel, but my domain expertise is, I started as a merchant. I was a business leader. I was in charge of departments that were anywhere from, 50 million to close to 300 million. And from beginning to end, it was always about the buyer. From beginning to end, it was always about making sure that we were providing them with the appetite that they were looking for. It wasn't about where are we at in the funnel. It was then how are we going to get that to a closed sale? How are we going to drive selling on that? And so that mindset, I think, has really allowed for me to look outside differently through a lens that's more customer success, more service driven, more about the buyer.
I think one of the things you were talking about, Clarence, is meeting people in their context at various times throughout the day. One of the examples that we use at first in the book is with the Palo Alto Networks, who we really like their campaign with Keanu Reeves, because you could have, like, how do you reach that CIO, that chief information officer? Maybe it's at work, but maybe it's at home on Instagram with the campaign that they use with Keanu Reeves, because these people are some of the same people, and I'm one of them. That I quote The Matrix. I've seen the Keanu Reeves movie, so it's like that's just one way where you see a B2B, a traditional business to business company do that. And I see ServiceNow is doing some of that too.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Well, when I read the synopsis, the first thought that came to mind was the show Severance. Have you guys watched Severance?
Yes,
Yeah.
I have. Yes.
So it's that very notion of,
that's okay.
Yeah.
I get yes.
Right?
Right.
Yeah, and it just clicked in my brain. It's
Oh,
the very
no.
notion of, like, you go into work, you turn into this completely different person. That there's this innie, there's this outie, and that to me is the kind of the foundation behind your what you argue in the book in terms of approaching marketing in a way that is so dehumanized and doesn't take into consideration the context of the person.
And isn't that part of the point of Severance? As they're saying, it's like you can't just shut off and be two separate people. It's like that's insane, but that makes for a great show. I mean, the show is great. Do you think they're gonna have a season 3? Because the way they ended season 2, I love. Just them running through the hallway. It's like, okay, it's like I don't want to know anymore. I just want to imagine in my mind what's going to happen. But
it was a very love-hate relationship with that show.
Yeah, there were times we were like, where are we going with this here? It's a little slow, but in the end, it's good though. But you're right. It spoke so much to work-life balance. To be honest with you, we were writing some things, and I thought about, I'm like, Severance would work. So that's good catch, Clarence. That's
save it for the second edition.
Exactly right. Edition 2.
So you guys also talk about the fact that the problem isn't new. but the stakes feel higher with the rise of generative AI. How has the age of machine identity accelerated this loss of nerve that you guys describe in the book?
Gosh, I would say there's a couple of things, and then I'll pass the baton over to you, Tony. But with AI, absolutely, there's this acceleration, but there's also this formula. We're still very robotic.
Yes.
With AI, it's technology, right? And now we are swimming in technology, and we are so focused on delivering that dashboard to leadership that we feel like we've got all the levers that we can have now to get prescriptive where the buyer is at and really understand where the conversions are happening, but we're not doing anything with it. It's a transaction instead of something that is being used to help us amplify the buyer journey, to help us figure out how we need to be building those relationships and providing those signals so we can respond back to these potential buyers.
I did. Yeah, that's so some great points. I hope that this book, I think maybe Clarence, you recognize that it comes at the perfect time, really.
Yes.
I mean, this is what everybody's talking about. How much human.
If anything, actually, I would say it's, a year or two late. Like we needed this 2 years ago.
Right.
So I'm glad somebody came out and said it.
That's a good point. Absolutely. So we actually, like in chapter 9, we decided to make, a lot of our examples are brands or people. And in chapter 9, well, we made one of the disruptors to be AI. And I think that's pretty obvious.
One of the things too is the first chapter is called the Curiosity Creed.
Yes.
So when you ask the question now and you think about it, we're not curious anymore. We're not interested. So we're not interesting. And that's where you've got this formula, this, transaction that your associates are pulling this dashboard, but they're not really thinking about it. They're just executing. And now you can say, look how many conversions we've had. Look how many potential leads we have. And that's great. But what does it mean to get to the finish line? Because if it doesn't close a sale, you're not thinking in the lens that you should be thinking. Again, it's about the funnel. And we have to take that funnel and kind of push it aside and say, what does this mean for the potential buyer?
Well, where I was going with is the old adage of garbage in and garbage out. You take movies like Wall-E, or you take movies like Idiocracy. Tanya and I have been having conversations about that, about how if you put in good information, you're probably going to get good information out. But if you don't have the experience to understand what to put in and what it means when it's coming out, AI could give you some nasty stuff. Like we like to say, we're kind of at a point where, if you're just going to let AI do everything for you, the dumb are going to get dumber and the smart will get smarter. Because the smart people are going to use AI to improve themselves, improve their brands, improve their companies. Whereas some people are just going to use it to get their stuff done and get it off their desk. And I think that's not good. That's where you get people in Wall-E, the movie Wall-E, or the people in Idiocracy, and where eventually they don't even know how to speak or do things for themselves.
Yeah. And one of the things that I actually really love about the book is that it has this kind of undertone or underlying notion that is rooted in leadership. And one of the things that I learned very early on in my my marketing journey is that marketing and leadership are rooted fundamentally in the same things, right? It's about understanding people, understanding their motivations, their values, what makes them tick, and how do you use that information to influence them to take action, right? And when you talk about Curiosity Creed, that actually spoke so directly to one of the things that I teach about leadership, which is that the most important thing is to lead with curiosity, right? Like I always say that when we teach leadership, we've overcomplicated it. Like we've named all these different leadership types and personality assessments and things of that nature. But when you really boil it down, leadership is about really 3 things. It's about asking the right questions to guide the other person or the other people to whatever the answer is to their problem, listening intently, and then caring enough to take action based on whatever it is that, the conversation is taking you to. And to me, the notion of Curiosity Creed and leading with curiosity speaks very much to that nature, which is, I think, the piece that has been lost in marketing.
1,000%.
Clarence, I think you were the angel on our shoulder when we wrote this. One of the things that, because it's very specific how we worded it too. When we say, if you're interested, you're interesting.
Yes.
Some people think it's the opposite way. They think, look at me, I'm interesting, and then everybody's supposed to be interested in that. I like the way you put it. I think that's kind of the way we're saying it. It's like, if you show genuine interest and curiosity, and it's real, people can tell the difference between, if it's authentic or not. Yeah. And if you're listening, that's what makes your brand, and that's what makes you interesting, hopefully. I mean, that's what we believe anyway. That's what I believe.
Well, I think we're just plugged in. So we're not, we're getting that dashboard. We're getting those opportunities in the funnel, top, middle, bottom. But we're not asking any questions. We're not listening to each other. We're just passing the baton over to the next the next department. And, there's a chapter that we talk about the cross-functional champion. I think you touched on that earlier. So,
yes.
It's really looking through, again, the buyer doesn't shop in funnels. They don't purchase, I'm at the top of the funnel today. I'm going to go to the bottom of the funnel. Now I'm going to go back to the top of the funnel. They're ping-ponging because they have all these resources now, because it needs to be omni. It needs to be you need to have your brand and your product and your solutions and your narrative in multiple channels. And so this whole linear notion has to, we have to kind of put the 2010 playbook. We got to kind of say, rest in peace. You did us good back then, but we're hanging on for it, and we're talking about the changes that need to happen.
Yep.
Yet we all kind of get back into our lanes and we kind of do what we're supposed to do. Okay, where are we at with the funnel?
Yeah. Well,
I like your leadership question too. That's kind of what that chapter is about. It's a lot about cross-functional champions, where we kind of talk about leadership. It's everywhere, really. It's from the top to bottom. We like to call it the convergence crew. It's when people get together. We use the office as an example. It's like even that seemingly dysfunctional group of people can really get something done when they put their mind to it, And if we like to think that, in our book anyway, in our ideas, is that marketing is really the core of that, the core of the communication internally and externally. It's like, if you've got messaging, it starts with marketing and that type of communications. And that's where hopefully it empowers people at all levels to be a leader, and to just carry the message. It kind of goes back. Do you ever read the book? What's the one with Jim Collins, getting people on the bus? Good to Great.
Good to Great. Yes. Yeah.
He talks about getting all the right people on the bus. And that's kind of what the cross-functional champion thing is sort of encompassing.
Yeah, I think an important thing that you guys brought up was one of the problems that, have really kind of been perpetuated or have really risen in marketing is that, we have all these metrics, all these dashboards, and really now generative AI. And as marketers, we've come to rely on them to just give us the answers, right? And not give us the opportunity to really ask questions, nor do a lot of marketers want to even take the time to ask questions and find the answers, which is really ironic because as marketers, we're communication specialists, right? We're supposed to be the ones that have these conversations and listen. But with technology and how that has, really changed marketing, it has just made it so that we don't even have those conversations. We just immediately get the answers. Yeah, it's very robotic and transactional, as you mentioned.
Yeah, I mean, it makes it more like accounting, right?
Yes. No offense to any accountants listening.
Sorry. Hey, her brother is an accountant. Love him. Great guy.
Yeah, so it has made marketing feel very binary, right? Which is something to talk about in my methodology. And, the reason why I chose marketing as one of the key components where misalignment happens is because marketing is very gray, right? It's so complex, but over the past decade, we've tried to make it very binary, very linear, when it's the very opposite of that.
I mean, data is wonderful. Data is awesome. But I've talked to marketers and they say it's all about the data. It's like, yeah, I mean, that's partly true. But I saw on your website, you had, what were your P's? You had purpose and people and profit, right? And that reminded me of an old thing that Tanya and I used. We didn't have this in the book, but we used to talk about literally like almost the same thing. We talked about, if you take care of your people and your product, you're going to be productive and have profitability. I think our philosophy really aligns with your company as well.
Thank you. So I want to dive into kind of the contrarian approach that you guys take with this book, because that's also one of the things that really resonated with me. Is like in my work, I try to take a very contrarian approach. I think that that's important to really challenge the status quo, but to really advance things to the next level. And I think that this idea of B2A and the smudge is very contrarian by nature, which I really appreciate. And you guys have really coined the term B2A, business to anyone. And to some, especially, those of us who are, those marketers who are very, stuck in their old ways, that might sound less targeted than B2B and B2C. So unpack that for us. Why is aiming for anyone actually a more precise and effective strategy?
I would say there's, like I said earlier, the lanes of B2C and the lane of B2B, they're independent. There's a lot of differences. One takes longer in terms of the sales cycle versus the other. There's things that will never roll over into the other lane. That being said, we're still targeting and touching humans. So in B2B, there may be more humans you have to touch. It's still a human, and they want to feel seen and be heard today. They
Yeah.
want to be able to have a voice in the decision making. And what we've been doing in a B2B world is kind of shoving it down their face. Like, this is our product. This is why you need to buy it. Here it is. Now schedule a 45-minute demo. Today, 4 unique generations in the marketplace, we all think and operate very differently, and we are much more independent in how we do that. So we have to let the buyer and think about the buyer, and we haven't done that. And to me, it's about interactive demos. It's about omni-channel presence. It's about still understanding that there's going to be multiple levels and multiple people in the decision making in the B2B world, but understanding that at the end of the day, you're still talking to a person. And so that's where some of the principles from B2C kind of move in, but I'm never going to say that there's going to be one lane. I think they will be independent of each other, but what we're saying is that there's some synergies today that we should not ignore because we've been plugged and played into each of these lanes.
Yeah.
I like that you like the idea of the smudge. If you notice, if people see the book at first on the cover, they might not notice that there's that smudge on the front.
That was me.
There you go. But I think that's so relatable because it's kind of the beauty of humanity, really. Because like you're talking about, there's such automation, and that's what Warhol. That's not the only thing he was going for, but one of the things he was going for with his silk screens, I think, was you have automation and you have beautiful imperfections in some of the smudges, and that's what makes it great. That's what makes it beautiful art or beautiful content or beautiful marketing. There's something that's just, maybe touches somebody in a little bit different way, or maybe you're sending it in a different way. That's one thing we talk about also is like the Impressionists, where, what they just asked the question, they said, what if we just painted what we saw? Just paint what we see. And it seemed like a radical, I'm sure, and it was. I'm not a historian in the Impressionists, but I'm sure it was a pretty radical idea, and they went for it. And that's what we like, right? Trying different ideas, stepping outside the box.
Yeah.
And the constant is, this two lanes, there's variations, but the constant is people. It's humans. And so that's what we're amplifying. That's what we're focused in talking about. And, that's where the Poise frameworks comes into play. And that's where the conversations of cross-functional champion, one of the chapters, the human element is another chapter where we're talking about some of these ways of not discounting, but really kind of just peeling back a little bit more and looking at the human connection. And what does that mean?
Yeah. And at the same time, you were talking, Clarence, earlier about how it took you 5 years, and here you are. But it takes a lot of hard work. And one of the chapters we talk about that is an idea which we like was called Nissan marketing. And it's all about preparation. It's all about, and being able to observe things and being able to be the architect and be able to create systems. But it's so much about working hard and being prepared so that you can pivot on a dime, because the technologies we have today, if you know what you need to do and you're so prepared, it's going to come across very authentically, because you know each scenario. And right, you start with a campaign. If it's not working, you can pivot really fast.
Yeah.
But you
You have
have
the
to be able to
foundation.
know that. And then one of the things, the ways that you know that is you prepare for every possible scenario that you can. And like you said, and the harder you work, the more insightful you get. And now you're a CMO, right?
Yeah. So, okay, we've talked about the Poise framework a few times now. So let's dive deep into that and kind of unpack what that really means. And I like, again, like I like a lot of things about this book, but the concept of poise and kind of the oppositeness of it from the concept of the smudge. So take us into the Poise framework. What does it mean? How did you come to really, develop this as the core framework behind this book?
I've always operated in Poise. We just didn't have a name to put to it. And so as we started writing the book, personalization kept coming up, being nonlinear, being more omni, being innovative, being strategic, and then having this EQ, having this human element. And in full transparency, we put it in ChatGPT and we said, help us come up with something. We
Yes.
have this framework.
Just
What
the
can
acronym. We had the words, and when the acronym came out, we're like, well, duh. Right?
Yeah.
Of
So
course.
I don't know if you want to put that in there, but I mean, that's, to me, that's how, how we arrived at it. And it's been something that's been part of my tool belt, if you will, since, the genesis of me starting my career. Is you can't operate in a nonlinear way. You can't operate without understanding your framework, and you cannot operate without knowing ultimately what your strategy is and how you're going to get there. If you ignore personalization and EQ, you're going to likely not find the strategy working, because you're missing a huge component of it. And that's the engagement with the human side.
Yeah. These 5 pillars, they, like Tanya said, they just came up conversation after conversation. We help each other write things for marketing. And it made so much sense, because it's also another dual meaning word. It's not just an acronym. It's also how you carry yourself, hopefully, and how you carry your company and how you represent your brand. It's like, hopefully you do that with a little poise too, and a little bit of humanity. And so that's kind of a dual meaning there too. Kind of like the dual meaning words.
Yeah. Can you guys take us through kind of a little summary of each piece of the Poise framework and how I as a marketer would apply that in my approach to B2A?
Absolutely. I'll start with Poise. So when you think about personalization today, I think we as marketers think, okay, if I put in an email, hi, space, Tanya, that's enough personalization. And there's more to it. There's a lot more. I mean, now that is flagged as spam. Bye.
Yeah.
Personalization is really doing your homework on that individual, on that business, on that persona, that person, so you can build a much more authentic personal email or a much more authentic personal note. It's really taking it a step further and not looking at it such as a transaction, the spray and pray, the mass, get off your mask.
Yes.
It's really looking at it, how can I become more interested in this person? And by me doing that research, that's going to show that interest.
If I may, yeah, when it comes to personalization, we thought about what's a good way to demonstrate to people what that means. And I think over the years, a lot of times we've said, sometimes you learn as much of what not to do by watching things as what to do. In our book, we decided to go with a lot of the different Saturday Night Live skits. Nate Bargatze as General George Washington, Kate McKinnon as Colleen Rafter. And I think it really, or Kristen Wiig as Target Lady, it shows a lot of disconnect, whether you're in a meetings, or whether you're had a consumer experience that's different from the next person, or if you're Target Lady and you get excited about a toilet brush, It's like, okay, it's like chill, it's not that big of a deal. So we were trying to show some people it's like, okay, personalization can happen, but here's maybe what not to do. Because we see a lot of people talking about what to do. And yes, we get into that too, but we thought it'd be kind of fun to give some Saturday Night Live examples. Pretty relatable. Hopefully. I hope they're funny. I think they are.
And then Omni-Channel, for me and for us in writing the book, it's again, I think there's going to be a common theme. It's really about thinking about the buyer. And selfishly, we haven't been there in B2B. We've been really product-led focused and making them come to us. Now we're going to them. And that's where we need to be sprinkling in our messaging personalized through all of those channels of where they may be. And depending on the 859 to the 501, where they're at may be Pinterest, where they're at may be LinkedIn. And as long as that messaging is consistent in your brand and in your tone and delivery, that's what you want to be recognized for. Buyer first, being where they're going to be, knowing that they're a human at the end of the day. And so being cognizant of that as you build that omni-channel roadmap out.
I think that's really good. I think Omni-Channel is a very well-established idea. I think a lot of people obviously know that. I know Tanya worked with Jockey way back, over a decade ago, and they were starting to develop some of their Omni-Channel ideas. We like to talk about it as an ecosystem effect. So we're trying to take it a step further where, I think what you're talking about, alignment, and being a cross-functional champion within that omni-channel. Hopefully you're not just reaching people at any touch point that you can, but you're reaching them at the points where you're really building a community and something that matters, and you're building that ecosystem. And that's kind of where we take omni-channel to that just a little bit different way. But it's, because omni-channel, I think, is kind of well established. But we know what that means. But it's an important part of the pillars.
Yes.
And then, innovation, it's kind of a little bit of the mise-en marketing. It's a little bit of the Mosaic marketing. And we didn't go into detail on the Mosaic marketing, but what you already have, okay, don't forget about your core. A lot of brands, when things aren't working, they bring a new leadership in and they're going to change the strategy. They're going to, go to a younger audience. They're going to go more preppy. They're going to go, just a different route. And what you find most of the time is that leader gets, 2 years and then they're gone, and then another 2, and so innovation really is talking about how can you take some of that core and build off of that. And one of the companies I worked for, it was a sustainable e-commerce company called Fair Indigo. We were looking at how we could really hone in and focus on our core. What were we good at? And it was about building great t-shirts. And we got there through data, of course. We got there through whiteboarding, those messy whiteboards that you were talking about. But what we did is we built out a campaign that talked about what it looked like to build a t-shirt, from the dirt of how, things were being planted to the hands of the customer. And it was a campaign that was called, 97 hands of how it took to build this one t-shirt. And we take them through that experience and what that looked like. And what that ended up creating was purpose. It ended up creating a narrative, a story, where people that were listening and reading that felt like they were a part of it. It was an engagement that made them feel like they belonged to this community because of the price was a little higher. But the t-shirt would last for 5 years because there was, 97 pairs of hands that touched that shirt before it got to your front stoop at your house.
I'm really glad that Tanya brought up Mosaic marketing when we talk about innovation, because so many times people think innovation comes from something like literally out of nowhere. And that's what we talk about with being a Mosaic is layering ideas and using the experiences that and building on that. Because that's where a lot of great innovation can come from. We talk about Disney, and we talk about how Leonardo da Vinci was part architect and part sculptor, part painter, and his work was never done. He was always continuing to do things. And that's kind of where we see like Disney or Nike or LL Bean. It was as a great example, another place where Tanya worked, where they really built off a foundation of heritage. And yet they're still innovating today, 120 years later.
Yeah. Take us to the S.
Strategy. Really it's keeping abreast of what's happening in the marketplace, keeping abreast of what's happening with your buyers, and really being honest with each other. I see it as a way for, us to really build, again, kind of keeping with the core, and then how do you amplify that? How do you build off that through the strategy lens, and making sure that, again, the strategy is talking about the customer from beginning to end, not the strategy and how we're going to get leads, but really thinking about the strategy, what that means from the buyer lens. How are they going to see that we're putting them first and front and center of our strategy?
I think strategies can change from company to company, brand to brand. One of the things that we put the chapter of Poise as the penultimate chapter, because we really wanted to show people that all these ideas leading into it, we wanted them to recognize it by the time we got there. And when you're talking about strategy, it's really hard to be specific on what each person should do. But when you talk about the curiosity creed, or the human element, or having relationships, purpose, and mission, and really being authentic and resonating with people, these are the things that we try to build toward. And I think if you, like we were talking earlier, if you have AI and you have your own personal experiences and your ideas, the humanity behind it, the smudge behind it, you're going to come up with good strategy. And at least you're going to come up with good ideas. And if you're prepared, like you are with me, and you've got different ideas and you can pivot, we really tried to show people that it's about humans, the human element, and experiences, and just relationships. And so I think strategy is born from that.
Yeah, 100%.
And that takes us to emotional intelligence. That's really the through line. It's really about how when to speak and how to respond and when to step back. There's an example of Chewy, the company Chewy, that I think we're all familiar with, a brand that has supplies for pets, and this company had a philosophy and really gave their teams like this autonomy. There was a situation where I believe there, and Tony, you might be able to speak to this story a little bit better, because I believe it was the customer just lost their dog.
Yeah.
And I think they were on a subscription model where they were getting their pills or something. The customer success person took that as an opportunity to send a personalized note, flowers, to the owners of that pet. And really, it wasn't planned. It was just felt. And internally, the infrastructure at Chewy, they have the abilities to have that autonomy and make a decision like that, which is great. They didn't have to run it through the food chain. And so they sent them this note, and there was obviously a response back from the family. But that's the type of emotional intelligence that really, really pulls at the strings and really lets them know that you heard them.
I think the Chewy example is a wonderful example where a company just empowers people to do the right thing. People forget about the customer service part of it. That's part of the consumer experience, right? And sometimes people think of a more marketing as being advertising or whatnot, but it's really about connecting. And I think Chewy demonstrated it so well. And one of the examples we like to use is Steven Spielberg, because we thought he was kind of universal, and his ideas from Jaws to Close Encounters, even to bad examples like Minority Report, we thought the people could relate to them, about how things have meaning, about how things have emotional connection. And hopefully, I think there's many directors that exude emotional intelligence. I just think Spielberg, he just happens to be one of my favorites.
Yeah. I mean, he's brilliant.
Yeah. I mean, he is brilliant. And to me, this Poise is really, it's a template. It's not a template. Call it what you want to call it. But I think it's really about staying grounded while still growing.
Yes.
And once the team learns that, they're not just doing better marketing, but like you were saying, Clarence, we are becoming them better communicators, better collaborators, and stronger leaders. And that's what we ultimately want. And so I say we do get off our masks.
Yeah.
We step away from the formula that we have today, and we look at how we can approach marketing, the customer, the buyer through a different lens. And not everything there's not one way. So if anybody's looking for this book to be, where are the 10 tips and tricks? I thought this was going to be a book about, tell me. Every situation's different. But if you think in this mindset and you ask the right questions and you're an active listener, yes, the funnel's still going to be there in some capacity, but you're not going to focus so much on the funnel. You're going to focus more on Poise. You're going to focus more on the end user. You're going to think about what's in it for them. And that's the unlock for me and for us, and really building this and creating this book and these methodologies.
Yeah, I hope it's relatable. I think it is. I hope it is. Like Tanya said, it's not like, a checklist of things. We decided to put in the last, I don't know how far you got, Clarence, but we decided to put in the last chapter something which we thought was kind of creative. Yeah. We went with Queen Elizabeth only because as we're writing and talking about all these things, it was just, we've seen The Crown, the Netflix series, and it's just everything that she seemed to do. She had to learn, obviously, but boy, all the stories throughout the chapters just seem to align with different parts of her life, whether it was with Prince Philip or when she was young in the war or later days at her Jubilee. So we thought it was kind of a fun way to end it. I don't know.
Yeah. Yeah. No, well, first of all, I want to say thank you for sharing insight into the Poise framework. I think that it's such a powerful framework that really effectively takes kind of this complex, messy, oversaturated, overcomplicated idea of marketing and really like extracts the most important things. So if I were a new marketer going into the field of marketing, I think it's a great starting point on how to really approach marketing for the modern day. And I was reminded, I recently saw this TikTok post. I don't even remember who it was, but she was saying that a lot of content today and really a lot of, leaders tell you what to think. They tell you what to do, but not enough tell you how to do it. And I think that this framework does that. It does a very good job of saying how to approach it, not even how to do it, but how to approach it, like the mindset to have.
Thank you. I've connected on that because like when you said it had contrarian undertones, it's not being disruptive, like, hey, look at me. It's just like, think differently. You don't always have, you don't have to always be business to business. You don't always have to be business to consumer. You don't have to do it exactly the way this person did it. That's why we don't have lists of things. We want you to take your own experiences and use them. Use that TV show you watched. Use that time at your birthday party. Take it from everywhere. That's what's going to be relatable. So
yes,
I'm glad you like the contrarian ideas. I do too. I think I'm naturally that way.
Yes, we have to be.
Yeah, right? I think you're right, though.
Life's boring.
We think, okay, how am I going to market today? Okay, you can't get marketing through, just, I don't know, like you were saying, Tony, being at a birthday party, something may spark. And
I put as many ideas on a treadmill,
So, but I think we're very formulaic in many ways, and we got to lift our heads up and start really asking some good questions and getting more intimate with our buyers. I go back to, and this is going to date me, but I go back to when we had focus groups. In a room, we'd have our persona.
We still have those.
And as a buyer, as a marketing person, we would be behind the scenes, but we'd be listening and watching the dialogue about swimwear, whatever we were talking about. We really need to get back. What does that look like in 2025? Like, how do we get back to more of that? I think it's really important to, really let the buyers, let them be a huge resource in how we look at things as we go forward.
I think that there's so much about marketing that needs to be fixed, and conversations like this have to happen. And there are a lot of leaders that are having conversations, but we need even more. to happen. And so I don't want to run away from the conversation, because I think that there's a lot of really important things that your book talks about, and a lot of things that your book barely taps into that I think we can continue to pull the thread on.
Yeah.
So if you guys are willing to, I would love to continue the conversation.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Hey everyone, thank you so much for listening. I hope you enjoyed that episode and the conversation with Tanya and Tony, where they shared insights about their new book, Get Off Your Mess. The truth is, we talked about so many important topics that we just couldn't fit it into one episode. So I'm excited they'll be joining us back in episode 3 next week, where we will dive into understanding how the B2A framework can be applied to how we lead our teams and influence internal culture. Make sure to listen, rate, subscribe, and we'll see you in next week's episode.